Hello.
Hi.
Of course, welcome back to Reference Roundtable. I'm Lacey, and of course with me is Michael and Sarah. And I've been really looking forward to today's episode. So we're doing our monthly book club. So we've all read the same book, and now we're going to talk about it. This month was my pick, so that's kind of why I'm starting us off here. And we read Madhouse at the End of the Earth, The Belgica's Journey into the Dark Arctic Night by Julian Sancton. It came out last year, I think May 2021 sounds about right. And it was a New York Times bestseller. It was on lots of best of lists. And I had high hopes for it because I'm a really big fan of historical nonfiction. I love Eric Larson books and things like that, where you get to learn about an event or something and just really deep dive into it. So I'll give you a quick summary of the book before we start talking about it, so you kind of have an idea of what's going on. It's the story of the Belgica, which was a ship captained by a Belgian man, which is, I think, why they named it the Belgica, yes. Right? He was very proud of being Belgian. His name was Adrian de Gerlache, right?
De Gerlache.
De Gerlache.
See, it sounded like goulash in the audio.
Yeah, De Gerlache. Yeah.
Any Belgians sound off below on how to say this name.
Or French, because I think they speak French in Belgian, right?
Right, but I don't know if there's an accent.
Yeah, no idea.
That's unique to Belgium.
That's beyond my knowledge. So all of this happened in 1897, and de Gerlache gathered around him a group of sailors and explorers, and their goal was to take this ship and get to the magnetic South Pole. Nobody at that time had gone there and kind of said, hey, we went there and all that stuff. And of course, like any good exploration story, it went awry very quickly into their journey. So yeah, I think we can probably just dive right in.
I'm down.
Mm-hmm. So did you guys like it overall? Did you enjoy it as kind of a story? And
yeah, I love historical nonfiction as well. It sends me down Wikipedia rabbit holes too. I was Googling things the whole time I was reading this. It's not something I really knew anything about. There were names that sounded vaguely familiar, but what really kind of stunned me was that people were doing this. I don't know. It seems like the technology shouldn't have been good enough to allow them to go down there and survive. Mm-hmm. So that was really fascinating to me.
It seemed to me like a very human thing.
Yeah.
It was very much because at this point they had, kind of gone all over the globe. There had been all these explorations and journeys and, claiming this land for this company or, country and everything. And this was kind of the last, untouched place, Mm-hmm. And so that kind of struck me as very human.
Mm-hmm.
We have to find this and conquer it, sort of.
Yeah, who's going to be first? And
it was very physical.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
yeah. And
so this is not a book I would have chosen to read myself, honestly. But it was very interesting. There were definitely parts that I was like, the animals, I can't. But there's a lot of surviving. It's a survival story.
They ate Arctic animals, it was just
that's not my cup of tea. But yeah, it was very interesting, and I had not heard of it before either, but some of the things they discovered on the ship was really, really fascinating to me. The light lamps, I don't know what you call it, but they discovered that people need light.
Oh yeah, seasonal affective disorder.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I was wow, that was really interesting to learn where that kind of started from, because it was dark.
Mm-hmm.
They when they went, they had to spend an entire winter in the Arctic, and it's dark there for I think it was 2 months or something, where it's just dark.
Yeah,
there's
no light,
no sunset, no sunrise. It's dark. So
yeah, and they figured out that people need light to be sane.
Yeah, everybody went a little cabin fever. Everyone got cabin. Is that the right term? Cabin
mm-hmm.
fever.
There's a lot crazy. It's called the Madhouse at the end of the earth.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people kind of losing it.
Yeah,
as I would.
So Sam says hi.
Hello,
Sam.
She also says, I don't know if I like the thought of someone eating a polar bear. That is sad.
I don't think there were any polar bears.
There were plenty of seals and plenty of penguins.
There aren't polar bears at the South Pole. They ate a bunch of seals. They did a bunch of stuff with penguins, like desecrating penguin bodies by tying them to the ship. They would tie penguin bodies to the ship to keep the ice from hitting the wood.
Like as a buffer.
So if you like penguins, there's a lot to unpack here. Polar bears, though, did die in this book because if you remember towards the end, I think it's Cook or one of them starts doing like polar bear hunting tours to the North Pole.
Oh, yeah.
So he takes like rich tourists to go.
Yeah, that was
polar
like
bears.
in the afterwards.
Yeah.
Like after.
So.
Yeah. I didn't like that part, but I read it and I got past it to get to the more interesting, the things that I found more interesting. Anyway.
It's stuff like I don't know if I'd be able to do to survive. Like, do you think you could eat penguin meat for a whole winter?
Nope. I wouldn't even go on a trip like that, but I wouldn't survive.
I mean, it's one of those things where, like, I think eventually I could.
Yeah.
Because you get to the point where it's like, you eat the penguin or you're dead. You know what I mean? Like, dead. And Sarah's dead.
No question.
All right, Michael and I might survive. Sarah's not.
You can eat me. That's fine.
Something they talked about in the book that like definitely rang true to me was like how even though we think of like the Arctic or the Antarctic as like a really sterile place, it was really stinky and smelly. And I know this to be true because my cousin and her husband went on their honeymoon to Antarctica because it was the last continent to visit or whatever.
Oh, wow.
And I was actually at the airport to pick them up because we were having a family reunion when they came back. So I was one of the first people to see them when they got back from Antarctica, and they still had penguin poop on their coats and they smelled so bad. So I do know what the smell of like penguin guano
they eat a lot of fish. So
yep. And so when they're talking about the oily,
really
fishy, nasty smell, I was like, yeah, Antarctica probably is really stinky.
I could see that.
I believe it.
Got a couple comments here. Anne says, dinos, mammals, murder, madness.
All
day.
We like to hit it all here.
Yes, we love it. And Adam says, Cook was a very interesting guy. He was one of the more interesting characters, I thought, but I haven't finished the book yet.
Yeah, he's tragic.
Cook was really interesting. He was kind of one of the like scientisty guys they had on there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you can research him. His name was Dr. Frederick Cook. And he kind of became famous after this, basically for being a charlatan.
Yeah.
And so that could be a whole nother episode, but you could definitely check him out. Frederick Cook.
Was he the lone American?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he was an American.
So he didn't speak it, and I know he didn't learn any languages, but he towards the end like spoke like a smorgasbord because it was it like French. Was it German,
Norwegian,
mm-hmm. It was a weird, like a lot of different cultures in one tiny boat, and there's a lot of tension between that.
Yeah.
Like that cook that got kicked out right away because it was the French Belgian cook. They kicked out a cook in South America before they even made it.
He was not a team player.
No.
Yeah.
Another really interesting character that I liked. I don't even know if I'd say I liked him as a person, but Roald Amundsen. He actually became, that was like his whole thing. This was kind of one of his first like forays, but he actually is really, really well known as a Norwegian explorer. And I found him really interesting because he was like into it. I mean, his whole like personality was like, I'm going to be an explorer. He was, they didn't even need to like do anything. They could just like, it was dark out and everyone was like, oh, we should sit and stay. And he'd be like out there climbing icebergs, like for fun. I mean, that was his whole thing. He was loving it out there, like testing his physical strength and stamina. He was
I thought it was very sweet, like that he went to visit Cook too, right? That was him who went and they were like, he was like, I still respect you, even though the world laughs at you.
Even though you're a charlatan.
Even though you're a charlatan. And also he was like, I thought it was just, because he went back to the South Pole. Like, he's the one who went back, right? And I was like, that's like, when you watch like Jurassic Park and you're like, why these people end up back on an island full of dinosaurs? And he's like totally the type who would end up back on an island full of dinosaurs.
Amundsen reminded me of somebody who just like doesn't say no or doesn't ever get stopped by anything. He's like, he likes the challenge. Like he wants you to make his life harder.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which they ran into some hard times, and I'm like, just like imagining, well, in 1897 there was no technology, obviously, and they got, what did they call the thing that they got caught in the ice? I can't remember.
I don't.
But they got like stuck.
Yeah.
And they basically had to wait for this ice to clear before they could break free, and like they really didn't know if they were going to make it out of there, if the ice was going to sink the ship, and it could have. So
no, they were trapped.
They were trapped.
It wasn't like they got down there and they were like they actually got trapped in the ice. I don't know exactly how ice flows work, but
thankfully,
they were stuck. The most harrowing parts for me was when they were all on the ship and they were talking about the ice pushing against it, and they could hear like creaks and groans of the wood, sometimes cracking of the wood. They would have to like go in and like, try and fix it and patch holes and stuff. Yeah. And can you imagine being on a boat that's being like slowly crushed?
Also,
that would drive you mad.
In the pitch black.
Terrified of the ocean.
You're like working against all these things. I didn't know anything about this, and I didn't want to Google it until I was done reading it, because I was like, they're not going to survive.
Yeah, I totally
like they're done.
Yeah,
but it was amazing. So,
they also like. I was so frustrated with them because they brought a lot of explosives that just didn't work, and they tried to make them work so many times. And towards the end, they did come in handy like once, but otherwise they just spent a lot of time like surrounded by explosives.
And they had really like tons. Things. It wasn't like a couple of sticks of dynamite. It was like an insane amount. It was like 100 tons of this like chalky, like moldable, like explosive. It was crazy.
The whole ship could have like just gone anytime. There were just so many ways more people should have died.
Right. There's no way they should have come back.
It's an extraordinary story. Like,
it's extraordinary. Definitely.
It's one of those like unbelievable if there weren't witnesses kind of things.
Yeah. Right. And what was the other, like the disease? Was it scurvy?
Scurvy.
They figured out like how to like cure it basically, or like overcome it anyway.
Penguin meat.
Yeah.
They ate a lot of penguin meat to fight off the scurvy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and then another thing and this is, I think Cook prescribed it because he's kind of the doctor of the, but he called it baking, and it was basically like sitting in front of like a warm fire.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, it's not exactly, but I'm like, that's kind of, what we, how we treat people with like seasonal affective disorder. Go sit in front of like a sun lamp or something, especially if you live in like the Midwest and there's no, you can't really sit outside.
Right.
He
was like really concerned for everyone's mental health too. Like he would give them goals that sometimes he knew were like pointless, but just to have like a task to focus on. Because he kept saying like hope was like one of the most important things for their survival. Because I would have like lost hope so quickly, especially in the darkness, in this like death trap, just completely isolated from civilization. And then I think even during like the long night in winter, like the animals had gone away too, so they didn't even have like hunting to do. I don't know. It's nice. He was like the cruise ship director. This is kind of what I thought of him.
Yeah, he was very like, he kept him going. I think that's why Amundsen still respected him.
Yeah,
because for all of his being a con artist after this, he definitely kept everybody going there and was obviously there to help and wanted everyone to do good.
I imagine him as
healthy.
I imagine him as like a very charismatic figure who is like probably like really likable if he could get so many people to believe like fraud.
Right.
A lot of like fraudulent people are very likable people.
Right. Well, if you're gonna con people, you gotta be fun and to be around at the very least.
Yeah. So we got a couple comments here. William wants to know, is that who the Cook Islands are named after?
No, that I know, and I don't remember his name. But he was in I believe in the late 1600s or early 1700s. I believe he was an Englishman. I read a book about him by Tony Horwitz called it's something blue. It's by Tony Horwitz. And it has blue latitudes.
Oh, yeah.
And that is his name was Captain Cook. I don't remember his first name.
Oh,
Blue Latitude sounds like a Y2K band. Like a girl group or a boy band.
So I know it's not the same guy. that other Cook was much earlier. So.
Yeah. And Adam says, the scurvy thing was interesting, how they used lime juice thinking it would work, but then finding out it didn't because it didn't work long term.
I seem to remember them talking about like specifically, like, was it raw meat?
Yeah.
Was what was good for scurvy?
Yeah, because there was something, I can't remember, it was some sort of vitamin or...
And it was like iron maybe
iron,
from the blood.
maybe, yeah.
And like they did some really astounding like physical feats down there after like, and I was so confused about how they were able to do like these, I mean, there's like photos in here of them. Let me see if I can find it. Like this, like cutting blocks of ice and maneuvering them. Like,
I don't know.
and these are people who've been trapped in ice for months.
Yeah.
And must have been starving and like, I don't know where you got their calories from, and I don't know if it's just because like seal meat is very blubbery. Like, do you think they were just like consuming a lot of like fat, like straight up fats? But like they, or just like running on adrenaline.
I think there's something to having a purpose. Like it could be really easy to be down there and just be like, we're gonna die.
Yeah.
Let's just sit here and just wait for it to happen.
Yeah, it was like they had everything working against them. Everything. Yeah, the temperatures were like freezing, like below freezing. Obviously, South Pole, the dark, the ice, everything.
Explosives not working.
No.
Am I remembering incorrectly, or were they all also really young, like in their 20s?
Yeah, I think de Gerlache was like in his early 30s. Most of them were pretty young. I know there were some sailors that were like even, I think, like 18 to 22 sort of thing. They were young.
Yeah. Well, Maddie says, well, learn something new. Fresh meat contains vitamin C. Yeah, that's what it was. I knew it was like a vitamin. So that seems weird, right?
Well, thank goodness we have like
orange
airborne.
Juice. And
Yeah.
yeah. Emergency.
Have a glass of orange juice.
Citrus fruit.
Don't eat raw penguin meat. That's if there's one thing to take away from that, it's thank goodness for vitamins.
For vitamin C.
Just a lot of like the near like one mistake could have killed them too. Like when he was talking about when they're cutting the chunks of ice and pushing them out to sea. Like if he didn't hop off at the right time, he'd just be stuck on an chunk of ice going out into the ocean,
floating off.
Because it's not like you can hop off and swim because the water will freeze you. That's my nightmare.
Yeah, the whole thing is
like floating out in the middle of nowhere in an iceberg. Just
I would have gone completely mad. I would have been batty.
I would have too.
Like I don't know. Either that would be really become like a really good hunter.
That's also why I really like books like this.
Yeah.
Because it's not something, I mean, I would never have considered doing it, but it's not something I'd even want to do. But that doesn't mean like I don't want to hear all about it, you know?
We benefit from their experience. Like
yeah. Okay, we got a comment from Adam. He says that happens in Lake Superior. People get stranded on large ice chunks and are floating away.
And Lake Superior is enormous. That could go very poorly.
That sounds terrifying.
The Great Lakes can be very dark-sided. They're ocean adjacent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cold too.
It's
Lake Superior, because I went to school up there, and even in August when it's like 105 degrees out and it's just like burning hot, the water's like 45 degrees. And just like I've only ever gotten into up to my knees, and it's so cold that like I can see the hypothermia and stuff because it hurts. It feels like your legs are being like stabbed with tiny needles. It's so cold. Terrible. So I can't imagine South Pole Arctic, coldness.
I bet you don't even feel it. Did you ever go to one of those like traveling Titanic exhibits where they have the piece of iceberg you can touch?
No. Yep. I have. They had the giant like wall of ice. It was kind of crazy.
I like so imagine living in that.
Yeah, I'm not so
nope.
Couldn't be me.
Trapped in it. I do have to say the one thing I appreciated about the book though was like when the journey ended, he like went on to tell about each of their lives afterwards and what they went on to do. So
it's
I like that part.
When you're watching the movies and then at the end they're playing the music and it's like so and so went on to be the da 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 da.
Exactly.
It was satisfying.
Exactly. I really like that.
His research was like bananas too. I mean, there's so many. I mean, I don't even know. It's probably like
sources,
like dozens of pages of like bibliography and stuff like that. He did his research. I know he used a lot of journals from the actual people that went on there to kind of piece it together. So it's well done.
Because the whole reason they did it was to like collect stuff and collect stories, even because they were the real driving force he always mentioned was like the adventure and the clout that came with that. But they did have a bunch of like scientific specimens that are still in museum collections today. Because I guess if you put an emperor penguin in, what's the stuff, formaldehyde or whatever they had it in, right? Didn't you go see a bunch of penguins that came from this? Yeah. I forget what museum they're in, but
didn't they also use some of their like their feedback and like journal writings for like space?
Yeah, they
because
did.
You know they wanted to know how people do in like darkness and without kind of the normal everyday things we think of, and I think they kind of used that to kind of prep people to go into space, which is crazy. That's right.
The other like legacy from it too that you're saying that is they also were they were the kind of the group that established that the Antarctica is like a no man's territory. Like there's no nation that owns Antarctica. It's a place where people go to collaborate, and that's because the ship was so like intercultural. It's like I can't believe that legacy's persevered so long. Like. And who knows how it could have happened, because they could have easily gone down there and like claimed Antarctica for Belgium.
That'd be interesting.
It would. I don't think it'd be very profitable.
No. Yeah, not lots of like minerals and animals and things. So
yeah. Well, we got another comment from Adam. He says, "When you got months with nothing to do but write and read, you get some really good journals." And that's definitely true.
Go to Antarctica and you'll finish that screenplay.
Or go crazy.
Yeah, right.
Or both.
And then you get a really good screenplay.
Yeah. Well, what's his name? The guy who did lose his mind. They burned his journal because they were talking about how that could have been valuable information to like see how somebody declines. And, because he kept a very thorough journal through his decline and then into his insanity, which he never recovered from. So that could have been of value for like psychological research, but then the crew like all agreed to burn it. And
they probably did it with like kindness in mind.
Oh,
maybe
absolutely.
To like save his family or something, or like to save them from reading it or whatever.
I have a feeling they were like, "No, this is cursed."
Yeah, but that's what I'm like. That adds mystery to it.
Okay, what does Maddie say here? Was this the expedition when they played music to penguins?
Maybe they did have penguin friends at first before they started eating them, because they had two that they brought on the ship as like pets.
Yeah, I can't.
And I think they did. I think they maybe did.
They might have.
I'm sure they did. If you have a penguin with
you have to.
Why would you not dance and sing with it? I've seen Happy Feet. I know penguins like to dance and sing. They were really amused by penguins too before they started eating them, and probably even after. They were like, these look like little people the way they walk. And that I forget who it was writing his descriptions about them and like really anthropomorphizing them. And he was like, oh, these ones have little attitudes that fit there, and like they look like they have mustaches, and it was really funny.
It was funny.
Well. You guys have any other things to share? I would definitely say I recommend it. Like, there is a lot of Arctic behavior. They're eating animals. It's not great, but I mean you have to imagine they're in the middle of nowhere. It's 1897. It's not like they could like crack open their deep freeze and like pull out their fresh chickens.
It was for survival.
Yeah.
It wasn't to be
But I think the story is crazy and interesting.
I just
so
threw the cat off because that was a little malicious. But no, it was good. I liked it a lot. I would definitely recommend this to people. I think if you like harrowing nonfiction stories, I think like even if you like a true crime, this has enough grisly stuff in it. Like it appeals to that like voyeuristic side where you're like you want to see people go through it.
Definitely. So yeah, I definitely recommend it. And Madhouse at the End of the Earth.
And it's available physically, and then is it e-audiobook and ebook?
Yeah, so you can go on Libby and read it or listen to it. And I think it's kind of a fun one for summer too, because you're not worried about the snow outside. There's
Right.
no snow, so it's kind of nice to have the Arctic.
exactly.
You know,
It's a
it might
good
be
summer
depressing if you're reading it in like January.
I
Yeah,
that is true.
when it's actually cold.
So good summer read.
Madhouse at the end of Iowa.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, of course, for joining us and sharing all of your excellent comments. Feel free to keep commenting away, even if you can't catch us live here. We still love to hear maybe what you thought of the book, or maybe you just want to share what you're reading with us. And of course, you can always reach out to us at our email, which is questions@siouxcitylibrary.org. Maybe you want to recommend a book you think we should read. And of course, we'll be back next week. And it's a new month, so
everybody knows what that means.
You know what that means, right?
It means new books.
New books. So you'll definitely want to be here to see all of the awesome new books. So,
I'm excited.
Yes, that's an exciting one.
all right.
Great.
Well,
We'll see you then.
keep reading.